Hello. How you doing, Daniel?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing all right. Are
Yeah,
you enjoying this cool weather in Texas that we have? That's finally come around?
I am. So this week I'm actually not at home. I'm in Dallas staying at my parents' place. And because I'm not at home, I can't just let the dog out to the backyard. I actually have to take him on walks. So I've been taking him on like 3 or 4 walks, and it is nice. Like going outside in the morning and it's like what, I don't know, 75 degrees. Definitely better than waking up and immediately I'm sweating as soon as I step
Yeah.
outside. So I'm enjoying
Yeah.
it.
We get like 5 months of that, so it's nice to have a little break. Well, I'm super psyched about our guest today. We have John Foster with us. Looking forward to this conversation. So welcome, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Nice to be here, guys. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, all's well and having a good week so far.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, let's go ahead and start with our first tradition on the Modern People Leader, which is good news stories. We like to just share personal or work related story from the past couple of weeks just to show a little gratitude and kick things off in a positive way. So, who wants to go first?
I can go.
All right,
Okay.
jump in.
So this past weekend was on Saturday we had what's called J Day. So somebody that was close to both Stephen and I who passed away a few years ago, every year his family puts on what they call J Day. So his name was Jansen. So it's Jansen Day and everybody goes out to their property out in Wimberley, which is just outside of Austin, and we go out there, listen to music, hang out, and usually it's like 40 to 50 people talk about Jansen and sort of just celebrate him for a day.
Wow.
So it was a success. And yeah, that was our third J Day, which is crazy. But it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gonna go ahead and I I don't think I've ever done this, but I'm gonna plus one your good news because I was there as well, and Jansen was was an employee, a friend, uh, he was a lot of things to a lot of people, and we were very very close, and so that I can't believe it's been 3 years first
Yeah.
of all. So just wanted to take a minute to reflect on that, and it was amazing. It's such a cool thing to get together with Jameson's family, with friends. We have mutual friends, so it a lot of love and a lot of fun. So I'm gonna piggyback on your good news and steal
Wow,
that as well.
what a great tradition. Great way to remember and gather and remember that people touch us in so many ways. That's so cool.
So true. How about you, John? What's your good news?
My good news, I was struggling with this for a little bit. I kind of have two different ones, but I'm going to pick the one after hearing that. I'm going with I'm a parent. I have 4 children. My wife and I have been working at this for a long time. They're all getting older. And they go away to school. All of them go away. They're not in our house anymore. So we have 2 in high school and 2 in college. And this is family weekend season. There's one in the fall and there's one in the spring. And it's my favorite time of year because we get to go see them at their schools and go hang out and see what their lives are like, away from us. And it brings back a lot of memories as well. It's kind of nostalgic because you can't help but think about your own experience at school. At least I can't. And I'm sure their kids are always like, yeah, we heard that. You used to do this, you used to do that. But more than anything, we get to see them in their own environment and they're all doing really well. So the good news is, the kids are growing and it's fun to watch them.
It's crazy how the fall just kind of sneaks up like that. It feels like it we're easing. Summer kind of lingers, and then boom, next thing you know, it's homecoming for my daughter who's in
Exactly.
middle
Yeah, it
school,
goes
and I'm
fast.
like, what?
Yeah.
Homecoming? How did that happen? Well, let's go ahead and get into the meat of the conversation. Not quite the core discussion topics that we want to cover today, but want to learn a little bit more about you, John, and we love to kind of share with our audience, our guests, history, the story that led to you becoming a CHRO at several organizations, brands that that everyday brands that people have heard of, and now a principal at Gamut Labs. Tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, I think, whenever anybody asks me that question, I always think of the Beatles song. It's a long and winding road. It just kind of does kind of unfold and wind around. And if I were to think about my life, my experience, like as in a career, I think of it in like 3 chapters. I had an early chapter where I focused a lot on individual development and did hundreds and hundreds of offsites. I mean, I can't say it was 1,000, but it might have been, where I just worked with junior high kids and high school kids and middle, like elementary school kids doing outdoor ed and sort of leadership retreats. And then I moved into corporate retreats. And so I did all of these like facilitation sessions outdoors, and it was super fun. And then I had this really lucky opportunity. One of the clients I was working with at the time in that phase was Citibank. And I think the way I like to think of these kind of major transitions in my career is like changing clothes. I was outdoors all the time wearing fleece and, shorts and climbing gear and wear stuff like that. And Citibank, as you know, is in New York, and it's a bank. So they wear ties and suits and stuff. So I kind of got dared by their CEO and head of HR at the time to join them to help them with an ongoing project. And I took them up on it. So kind of over a weekend, I moved from being an outdoor adventure guide type of person to an HR person working in a bank, which was kind of weird, but it's just a big switch. And then that led me down second chapter of lots of, corporate HR kind of work at Citibank and Fidelity and Levi Strauss. And ultimately, I ended my sort of corporate career, working as this is my first head of HR job at IDEO, which is a innovation consultants company, and they work with mostly Fortune 500 companies, and just a super cool company. And that was my first opportunity to be a head of HR. And from that, I got the tug to go into early stage companies and work in venture. So the last 10 years or so, I've been working with early stage companies, helping them get started, get their footing, get things built right, so they have a good culture and high performing workplace. And sort of the way I manage that, sometimes I'm inside and I'm full time, and I have been multiple times. And then sometimes I those don't work out as well. Venture, as you know, is a little volatile. So I have this kind of wrapper I put around all of that called Gamut Labs, which is my way of saying, okay, this might fall apart, and if it does, I'm going to learn from it, and we're going to take it on to the next thing, and we'll use it. So trying to capture my learning along the way and keep track of it. And that's phase 3. And that's where we are today.
Love it. Love it. I have a theory that every leader has a few special powers, and some of these special powers, sometimes they're innate, like we're born with these special powers. Other times they're learned over time, honed, perfected. And these are the special powers that allow us to succeed to the levels that we've been able to succeed. And my next question for you is, what would you say are your special powers?
Wow, that's a good one. I think in the last time somebody asked me this question, it was more in the line of, would you rather be invisible or fly? And that's always an interesting trade-off, but that's not really helpful. So I guess, the first thing that comes to mind is just, I'm very willing to say yes. So I say yes and instead of but. There's a yes, and there's usually not, it's not just do whatever. I'll say, and I also, so I'll say yes, I jump in. I think maybe it's because I just don't mind if I fall down on my face. My favorite comic strip always was Calvin and Hobbes. And there was always this one thing I used to have on my desk when I actually had a desk and you had physical paper around. I had this strip where Calvin's just walking along and he trips and falls down, and he stands up and he goes, ta-da, as if he did it on purpose. So I feel like I just fall forward and make it look like it was on purpose.
Yeah, I think the willingness to take on irrational risk or unknown risk is definitely a superpower. So that's kind of what I was hearing. And
yeah, my wife would agree. It's irrational. I mean, with kids in college and stuff like that, it's really scary, honestly. Like this year has been a scary year because one of the companies I went to work with this year, I thought it was going to be a longer term thing, and it didn't work out. The company's struggling, and instead of growing the company, we had to downsize the company. So it's definitely fraught and scary, but I guess that's why it's a superpower. I'm willing to do it because I think the upsides are there. I think of what I do a lot, like how investors work, and the biggest difference is investors get to have a portfolio of like multiple investments at one time. And I have to kind of do it one at a time, which makes it a lot harder because if it doesn't go well, you kind of have these periods of, real big uncertainty. So it's exciting. Like a roller coaster is exciting, but it can be scary too.
Well, I'm going to attribute your ability to be such a great podcast guest on your superpower of being just a good improviser and yes anding everything. So just wanted to call that out. Um, so, before we met today, you shared with us a rough draft of something that has been like a work in progress for you for years and years. You've, taken all of these playbooks that you've used at different companies, and you're now organizing your thoughts and writing a book, which is really exciting. And one thing that you talk about a lot is there's this power struggle that we're seeing between employees and employers. And you talk about how there's traditional organizations and there's human-centered organizations. So can you sort of tell us a little bit more about, I guess, like the problem statement of the book and what you're trying to get across?
Well, one of my habits, which might be super annoying, but I find for myself, I've decided to indulge in it as I go through this work, is I'm really interested in root words because I think language is really powerful and a lot of it's unconscious. I think the more we learn about people, the more we realize the brain wants us to be unconscious. Our brain does not want to spend a lot of energy thinking. And so we have all these things built into our ability to act. And one of them is, I think language has all these triggers and stimuli that are really useful. But also if we don't check them out every now and then, we might be operating on assumptions that aren't great. So one of the themes that I'm working on is just like checking out language. And when you thought about, you mentioned we might talk about power, I had to go look up power and figure out like, what's the root word? Where does it come from? And to go deeper, and I realized this is the English language, so it's definitely biased towards what they call Proto-Indo-European or PIE language. And it may not be true for other languages, and interpretations might even get worse. So this is just a little caveat that I understand that language does cause a lot of, I actually say to people all the time that the natural result of communication is misunderstanding because we all have different interpretations. So that said, I looked up power, and really what it means in Latin is this word that means to be able. So power is about being able. But if you go deeper, it's about the actual root word comes from the idea of a powerful lord. And it's a very masculine word. So in those days, power came from physical strength. And so if there was a strong person, it was likely a man. And that's where this root power comes from. It's a masculine, forceful effort to move something forward. And that connotation, I think, is super important in today's world because it does then really affect a lot of how we treat power. When you get to a little more useful stage, power is more about opportunity and capacity to move something forward. So typically in a traditional organization, power is held into a small number of roles that are at the top of a company in a hierarchy. And even if it's a paternalistic approach, which is a good use of hierarchy, beneficial, it's a small group of people telling everyone else what to do and using force to do it. And the forces they use in a traditional organization are controls. Some of it's employment, do this or else you don't have a job. And so that leads to a lot of sort of extrinsic motivation that's driving people to do things, whether they really want to or not. And so that's traditional organization. Works really well in manufacturing. It works really well in distribution of manufacturing goods because you've got a fixed thing that needs to get made over and over again. You don't really need to talk about it a lot. You don't want to mess it up. You want to get the money back out of your investment in that manufacturing process. So for the industrial age, it's been awesome. But now we're in the internet age and things have changed a lot. And we manufacture things still. And certainly I'm not trying to say that's all bad. But if you want to create something, you can't tell somebody, go be creative. And then it gets into who owns the outcome of that creation. So we've got people talking about discretionary effort and creative commons and trademarks and all these ownership things around content. And, is software content, if you're writing code for someone else and you're creating a new tool or widget, that belongs to the company because you signed something that says, if I make something, I'm going to give you the rights to it. And it's the way our music industry works. It's the way I'm learning this is the way publishing works as well. If I write something and I have someone else publish it, I might not be able to use it on this call, even though I wrote it. So like this is power being used in I think an unnecessary way with too many controls that protect the people with the starting impetus, which is usually money. So money becomes the new effort. Instead of being strong with physical force, you're strong with money. People with money have more power. They use that money to hold other people under their kind of jurisdiction. And that ultimately just isn't very human-centered. And it doesn't generate high performance. And we can go into that in depth if you want, but that's the fundamental difference. The power struggle that we're seeing today is employees are saying, wait, how come all the rules are for you? What about me? Like, if the company's failing, why do I get fired? You guys made all the decisions. Like, it doesn't seem right. So there's a lot of, and I think this is being, amplified and exacerbated now because transparency and the internet lets everybody talk to everybody really quickly. So it breaks down some of the old kind of barriers or protections that the power people had to kind of hide in the back room and, manipulate things.
Yeah.
So,
I heard you use this analogy, which I really love, which is, for somebody with a gluten intolerance, just a little bit of gluten can trigger them or can trigger that intolerance. And you feel the same way about, I guess, hierarchical thinking, how just like a tiny bit of it can ruin any process and all of a sudden make it not human centered. And it's like, when I heard that analogy, I was like, oh, I love that. That makes so much sense because it's so true. Like, people naturally are going to be intolerant anytime their company is mandating something or if it feels too paternalistic. And there's like this natural tendency to just like want to run away or do the complete opposite. So that really resonated with me.
Yeah, I think it's really apt. I think I like to work in metaphor and analogy a lot because you get such a concrete, visceral feeling for what something that's really generally vague and people don't really understand. So that's kind of like a great way to think about it. But I came to that conclusion after, I'm pretty slow, I guess. It took me 30 years of working in corporate change management and org development to realize that every time you make something, and if you incorporate that piece or that ingredient that's possibly, toxic, or I don't want to overuse the words, but, that creates a negative reaction, it only takes a little bit. And all the software we buy, there's this whole idea that if an organization designs something, they're going to make anything they have an outcome, and software is going to be a reflection of the organization itself. So if a hierarchical organization designs software, it's going to be hierarchical. And then if a non-hierarchical or a more egalitarian organization buys that software, they've just incorporated hierarchy into their company. And I've seen this time and again with early stage companies that are trying to scale, and they go out to buy software so they can be more efficient. And suddenly they're like, what happened to our old company? Now we're just like all the big companies. And that started to really, I've been seeping in that for a long time. And then my daughter recently, we discovered she's celiac, and she's more than just intolerant, she's allergic. And it was causing all this inflammation in her. I was like, wow, it's just amazing how hard you have to work to find food that doesn't have that particular element in it. And it just made sense to me that that's actually what we're doing with organs. So that led to the idea of the book maybe being called Start from Scratch. If you're going to build something new for this new world that we're operating in, which is rapid change, lots of transparency, lots of, the internet disrupted the industrial age. So we need new kinds of organizations that aren't polluted with the old kind of thinking. And it's so hard to build something that's not already, influenced by all that stuff. And that's where this language thing comes up. There's machine language in everything. Like we treat people like objects in our common language. So we have to really think hard and be careful about bringing those little elements in that might make it hard.
Well, yeah, and I'm jumping in because I definitely know Daniel wants to dig into this topic more. You always know how Daniel is interacting with the kind of topic or content that we're talking about with our guests, because he will use the word resonate. And I know he already used it. We're not that far in, and he's already used it. So things are resonating. But before we move on, you mentioned, I agree with the point that language matters and words matter. And one of the words that jumped out at me was reciprocity. And I'm just curious, like, how does reciprocity factor into the current discord based on kind of the lens that you're applying to all these concepts?
Well, it's a word to me that means win-win. It's, it's like, maybe it's too fancy of a word, but this started way back when I was at IDEO, and IDEO is like, we're non-hierarchical. I was like, okay, well, if you're non-hierarchical, you could be anything. What else are you? And so I casting about for words, there's this concept of holacracy out there that was being, pressed by Zappos. And there was all these words. And I was just like, I want something simpler that's just more fundamental. And, so paternalism, hierarchy, and reciprocity all seem like similar terms to me. Collaborative would be associated with reciprocity. And it's the idea supported, I think, by so many different long-term sustainable systems that why can't both sides win, or why can't everyone win? But if you design it right, and you build an agreement amongst the people that are participating, then there should be reciprocal benefits for everyone. They're not equal. It's not equality. It's reciprocal, meaning both sides get something. Whereas in traditional organizations, whether it's about hierarchy or not, it's typically a win-lose. There's going to be a winner. The one with power is going to get to keep the power. And the one without the power is going to have to accept consequences they may not really think are great. And every employment agreement you read right now, almost every, there are some companies that are trying to push the envelope, have these terms built into them that are to protect the company. And there's nothing wrong with protecting the company legally, but I think you don't have to be so one-sided, and you can create terms that are better for both if you're really thoughtful about it.
Well, yeah, and I mean, the reason why that word in particular jumped out at me is because I feel like a lot of the challenges that are being experienced in a lot of these trends that we're seeing in the people space, like quiet quitting, I believe that there's a growing feeling that this is not a reciprocal arrangement.
Right.
When we and all we need to think about is like flexibility, right? So as employees, we heard, oh, we need to be flexible. There's this pandemic, we need to do things differently. We need to survive, yada, yada, yada. And here we are a year later, 2 years later, that flexibility there it hasn't been reciprocated, right? And now where we were once the employee was being told like, hey, these are things that we need from you. Now we're hearing in ways that are manifesting themselves in not so positive ways that from employees like, hey, we're not seeing that back, and that's no longer okay. And this is just my interpretation and why I honed in on that one word. And so curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so this is actually tricky to unpack because the reactions we're getting, like quiet quitting, both sides react to that concept really interesting. I mean, it's just like it turns into a firestorm on LinkedIn, and social media is really not a great place to have these kinds of discussions because you get polarized quickly and you get reinforced by your algorithm to be right. And so we have a right and a wrong. And when there's a right and a wrong and there's a good and a bad, it's hard to get to some kind of agreement. And I think part of that is just symptomatic of the way it's set up. And this is why, so, someone doesn't feel good after they eat and they're like, oh my God, I ate too much, and you're like, well, actually, it's not you ate too much, you ate the wrong thing. And that's a different problem than eating too much. And so, feel better now. I'm going to go have another big hunk of bread and a peanut butter sandwich. And then suddenly I feel bad again and go, I keep eating at the wrong time. So it's not the wrong time, it was the wrong thing, because we don't understand and we're not conscious of what's going on in there. And so what I see in these things is a lack of understanding between the two parties about how to do something that would work for both. Because I don't think that organizations have to be out of control and unprofitable and all the things that get said. Like this I thought the Microsoft post they put out with their CEO talking about, paranoia, what was it called? Productivity paranoia. Is just another example of the two sides going to their end states and shooting at each other. And I'm using that intentionally because that's the way they treat it, like a war. I don't think it has to be a war at all. I think it's just a bad setup. If you just start from scratch and say, what do you want? What do you want? Is there any way we could both figure this out to make it so you get what you want and I get what I want? We have a million ideas about how to solve this problem. And so I think you really do have to like wipe the slate and start fresh in order to get to a better conversation.
Yeah, and it sounds like a lot of starting from scratch revolves around building a human-centered organization. So just curious, could you explain to our audience what a human-centered organization is and some of the key elements? And are there any examples, I guess, that come to mind of companies out there that you feel like operate this way?
So I don't think it's black and white. So I try to make it a from to, just to make it easier to understand and compare. So like but probably there's no polarized example of either. There's a lot of traditional organizations that have a lot of tradition kind of in them around the way they're structured and the way they behave, but still have some human-centered elements, and vice versa. There's some more human-centered, more radical kind of concepts out there, but still have some paternalistic and hierarchical elements. So it's not really just about the structure of the decision-making, which is where people go with the word hierarchy. It's about what's the design premise. And I think it's about what are you trying to solve? If you're trying to solve a creative problem, which is usually what a growth problem is about, is like, how do we invent something new in order to solve a need for a customer? I think it starts with customers. And so the customer needs us to behave a certain way. What's the best way for people to behave in order to solve that problem? Leads to a human-centered organization. So the first step is, how must we behave as people? And then we can build the structures to give them what they need. And in a traditional organization, the organization is built and then the people get dropped in. And they're dropped into slots or boxes or on a line. There are all these, industrial machine kind of structural elements that people it's not designed for the people, it's designed for the business or the product. So it's more of a product design led thing. And, so that's the main difference. So a good example right now, one of my favorite examples is professional sports. And there's a really big debate going on right now in the NFL about concussions and the violence that's happening, because the athletes are getting faster, they're hitting harder. And, they're wondering about the culture of, can I say I'm hurt or am I breaking my contract? Say they have some very hierarchical traditional elements in there, but they're also probably the leading entity out there that's thinking about biological health and the investment you can make into eating, sleeping, resting, and seeing how that changes your performance and your ability to think. So we don't think of sports often as where people are thinking the most, but a professional athlete is thinking very quickly. And if they're not tuned up properly, they won't be sharp. So I don't know. I don't have answered your question too fully there, but it's a process of discovery and design and assembly. It's not a single switch. You can just say, we're this way and now we're that way.
And so when you think about the future and how organizations will operate, are there a few kind of guiding principles of human-centered organizations? What does that look like? So similar question, but from a different angle.
Yeah.
Like, if I am starting from scratch and, I'm looking to build a human-centered organization, what does that look like?
Yeah. I think there's 5 dimensions so first of all, I think to build a human-centered organization, you have to assume a couple of things. You have to assume the world is changing constantly, and you have to assume humans aren't machines, and we have to think about, what do humans need when they work? So those 2 things are kind of precursor first principles. The next step is, there's 3 key ingredients when you build an organization. There's culture, there's leadership, and there's talent. And so when you go about doing anything around the culture, the leaders, or the talent, if you use the idea that it's going to change a lot and we need to build for humans, those 3 things might take different forms than they would if you were building an industrial organization. And I can get into that super deeply, but we don't have time for that probably today. Then you'd say, okay, how do we know it's human-centered and is it working? I have 5 dimensions that I've identified, and you'll see some of them in traditional organizations. First one is safe. Do we feel safe here? If we don't feel safe, we can't give anything really. The second one is productive. Are we able to get things done? Humans want to be productive. They want to do good work, but sometimes the organizations aren't designed to help a human be productive. So you have all these weird barriers and bureaucracies and administration stuff that gets in the way. Controls a lot of it. And then engaging. Is this engaging? Can I do my best work? Does this work fit with what I want to be doing? Do I get feedback? Can I grow and learn? Do I feel recognized? Those are some of the more softer human elements, but they lead to appreciation, and that's part of the human element. And then sustainable is the next one, and then transcendence, the last one. And sustainable is where we start getting into the issues of burnout and time and things like that. So have I designed the organization such that a human can function not only daily, but weekly, monthly, and maybe over a longer period of time, and still be productive at the end? And so the way you really think about that is lifetime employee value. And I think about all of that stuff as an investment versus a cost. You should still be able to measure at the end your cost of your employee divided by your lifetime employee value. And that ratio should tell you you have an effective human-centered organization.
Wow. Yeah, I'm
It's a
letting
lot to
all
jump in.
no, I'm letting that all sink in. And so, you know, the so if I'm understanding correctly, it's not binary. You're either human-centered organization or a traditional organization. There are kind of five, key pillars that we just talked about, or traits or characteristics of human-centered organizations. And so in the work that you have done, what does that look like in practice? Like, how do leaders begin to analyze these characteristics or understand in the work we do? At Workify, there's a focus on, okay, we have data, we understand about our organization. How do we take action on that data? And so, can you talk to us a little bit about, how do you create a bias action when you're looking at these things? Or, again, if it's not you, there's a silver bullet kind of approach to become a human-centered organization. Like, how do you see leaders, begin to embrace these concepts and take action and start to lean into it?
Yeah. Well, it's not as hard as it sounds, honestly. Like the way to simplify this down is to think of a graphic. I don't know how many people still have these things, but graphic equalizers. The most famous scene ever in a movie with a graphic equalizer. Do you guys know? Do you think of one movie, famous movie? I'll give you the hint. It's a Tom Cruise movie.
Ooh, I don't know.
It involves him sliding across the floor and singing, lip syncing. So right before he does that, he takes
Risky business.
Yeah, so he smashes down all the bars on his dad's graphic equalizer, and because he can't hear the difference in the sound, his dad comes home and he's like, "Do you notice a preponderance of bass, Joel? Like, what's going on?" And so because he had this perfect like setting on the graphic equalizer, and to me, those 5 dimensions are way simpler. There's only 5. There's not like 32. And you need to create a curve or a sound, like something analogous to a sound wave that is your human-centered organization wave. Certain amount of safety, a certain amount of productivity. In each of them have questions you can ask. So, we already ask a lot of questions on engagement. I would just use traditional engagement questions. But what we're understanding is engagement is too small. It doesn't take into account everything we need. So we have all the work from on fearless organization from Amy Edmondson at Harvard. She created this whole thing around safety and the fearless organization. That's not really addressed in engagement. So all I'm doing is taking 4 or 5 people's work and putting it into one complex thing and saying, this is complex, okay, but it's knowable. It's 5 things. There are standards in there we can measure and we can track them and say, okay, is this too much or not enough? And we can do that simply by asking ourselves questions about the performance of our organization, create a dashboard. And that's basically why I want to write the book, is like putting all that down on paper. It's easier to see when it's like written and you can see visuals. And so you ask those questions, you track yourself, and you experiment. Design is about prototyping and seeing if it changes. So if you try like opening the windows and it sounds bad, try closing the windows and see if it sounds better. And if not, change the graphic equalizer to make it, and so you just work both ends of it. What are we measuring and what are we experimenting with until you get things that are working in sort of like an orchestration. It's like another crazy analogy would be you're trying to make a symphony orchestra sound good. And if you've got a bunch of kids in junior high playing on, parents' night, it doesn't sound good. They're not executing. They can't, they're not ready. So you'd invest in that. It would take time. And eventually, you'll get good enough, or you'll say, you're just not good enough. I need to hire people, and so those are just different ways to play with it.
So going back to language, another word that I've noticed you use is workaround, and how rather than companies designing something that's actually better and human-centered, instead they've built all of these workarounds. And I just love that. And it's so true. It's like, rather than actually fixing the problem, they're like, oh, how can we put a Band-Aid on this?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, what are some examples of workarounds that you've seen pop up where you're like, wow, they really could have designed that better?
Yeah, there's a hot debate right now around burnout and people saying, hey, why don't you just take the afternoon off? That's a Band-Aid. And it might make me feel better because I can't function right now, but it's not going to fix the problem of burnout. So, we often say with burnout, it's a systems problem. You have to get underneath it and get into power and control. If I don't have any control over my work on a weekly basis, and I'm constantly being loaded up with somebody else's, then as a human being, adults like to have some control over what and how they do their work. And if they have no control and they're constantly being stretched, then that's a systems problem around how the work has been defined and distributed. And so you can give people time off and give them a break, and they might be less tired when they come back, but they're still burned out. So that's a perfect example of time off being a Band-Aid for burnout, which is the real problem. That's a design problem.
So I feel like you've already given a couple good book recommendations, but given that you've already given a couple great ones, what's like one book that you would recommend to every HR leader out there?
Well, geez, to every HR leader, that might change my thinking a little bit. But the best book I've read to understand humans in quite a while is called The Extended Mind by Annie Murphy Paul. It's just chock full of all of this stuff about what we know about what makes human beings successful. And when you read it the way she's presented it, it's three things. It's the brain is not a machine. We shouldn't be thinking about our mind as our brain. We need our whole body. We need relationships, and we also need our environment. So the idea of being outside in the sunshine, in nature, our surroundings, our relationships, and our bodies help us think better. And so if that's true, then how are we designing organizations to help people with all three of those dimensions? That's my favorite book right now, for sure.
Gonna have to check it out.
And before we enter the final segment of the conversation, I had a couple questions that aren't really related to Start From Scratch, the work you're doing. And you kind of touched upon this earlier in the intro conversation around like things not working out. And it seems as though we're entering a period where that's going to be all too common. Like I can't go into my LinkedIn feed and not see the layoffs, not see people looking, open to work. And I'm curious what your take is on like what the next 12 months will look like.
Well, honestly, I think I don't think it's great news from an employment standpoint. There are plenty of jobs open out there, but companies have been fueled for a couple of years. Well, look, let's talk about the startup. There's a couple different layers to this. There's the bigger economy. I think the bigger economy is going to get better next year. I want it to get better. We've been through a downturn here. Inflation and all that kind of stuff is affecting some of the big companies. The smaller companies I think there's a little bit of an echo chamber. I've been trying to get my LinkedIn feed to be broader, so it's not all startups and early stage companies, because I don't think everybody's getting laid off. I mean, it's a big problem, especially in the sector of tech startups. A lot of that is because we overfunded companies with free money. That problem's been fixed, and now a lot of these companies are trying to dig out of that. I mean, I just experienced it at one. When you get hundreds of millions of dollars and you're allowed to just hire at will to grow at all costs, there's going to be, a downside to that. We see that over and over again. So I think we're hopefully getting towards the end of that, where companies have pared back now and are more focused. So we have to deal with that. As an individual, finding work, be entrepreneurial, and be skills and projects oriented. I think the future of this problem could be fixed a little bit with the idea of being more focused on assignments and less on jobs. But that's to be invented yet. We don't have a system like that happening too much. There's some people doing that, but yeah.
We'll have to invite you back to a group conversation with Steve Cadigan.
Steven's pretty bullish on this.
Yeah. He mentions, that trend, that future prediction of his is that's where things are actually going.
Yeah.
and just there being a new hiring model altogether.
Yeah, I
Like, it
think
just
I
looking
agree with him.
completely
I've
different.
read his stuff and I saw that episode. I do believe in that. And I think, but we don't have everything in place yet. So it's early. I think it's destined to happen. It's a superior economic model. So I believe a lot of this stuff is driven by economics, and ultimately that's what will drive this to happen. Is it's going to be more efficient and more effective. So it will be better. But that's back
And
to the pollution again. You have to rethink, what is a job? What is work?
yeah. I mean, and that's really radically looking at reimagining things, and
Yeah.
change is hard and change takes
Yeah.
time. And so before we move on, the last question I have on this point is for modern people leaders out there, when we talk about human-centered organizations, human-centered design, human-centered leadership, what do you think is going to be most important for people leaders as we kind of navigate the next 12 months?
Well, I think the fundamental thing is it's a mindset switch of understanding that it's really, what do you want from your business? If you want something in any way that's creative, meaning it requires a person to figure something out, and that's even customer service, right? If you're going to be really good at hospitality, you need people that are standing in front of your guests who are figuring things out. If they act like robots, you might as well have them do an automatic check-in. And that's happening, right? Wherever we can, we have automation taking over. So where there's no automation, if you're not human-centered, you're going to fail. I think it's that simple. So it's not about being nice to people. It's not about fluffiness. It's about smart thinking about what's the best way to get creative output. And the best way is to be human-centered. It's not about giving people hugs. It's about giving them the conditions they need to thrive and perform at their best, which is uniquely human. So I think that's the most important thing, is this isn't an HR thing. This is a business design problem. And if you want a higher performing business and a creative outcome, you have to do it this way, or you'll continue to get mediocre results. You can't force people to create.
And I think that's the most important, that's the bottom line. Well, I won't say the bottom line, but a very important part of what we're talking about today is recognizing that human-centered doesn't mean fluffy, feel
Exactly.
good. And I think that's what people jump to in this world of
Exactly.
polarized
Yeah.
views. That's what people jump to, but that's
It's
not
a
really what
different
we're talking
framework.
about
It's
here.
a different paradigm. It's not, you can't layer it on top of traditional. Traditional, we don't care about people. Honestly, we just don't. So all of these workarounds are to try to make the people we don't care about feel less bad. It worked for a while. And then people are like, okay, give me more. And that's why we have the whole give me more thing, because they're being treated like machines or objects. So they want to be cared for. And we're fixing damage instead of enabling performance. And those are just different. They're just different equations around what you're trying to get.
Yeah. Have you read Influence by any chance?
Influence
By Robert Cialdini or Cialdini?
Yeah. Well, I'm
Like,
thinking like that was one of the first books I used to use back at Fidelity when we were teaching in persuasion. Yeah, so that's a great book.
Yeah.
Classic.
It's a great book if you're a marketer. And the main message of the book is people have been the same for forever. It's about understanding humans, right?
Yes, right.
And I feel like that's what you're saying. It's like, it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, I go into it for a bit in what I've been writing about, is this idea of the history of the traditional organization. It hasn't been around that long compared to humans. Humans have been around for 80,000, 100,000, maybe more years. And we've adapted to certain things that are really durable and very, very good at survival. And our organization model that we've been using is maybe 2,000 years old, and probably less than that. Maybe it's a couple hundred years old. And I try to call it, it's like, if you were zooming out in this weird metaphysical world and you're walking down the street and you tripped on a crack in the sidewalk, you'd probably just like look down and go, oops, and then you keep walking. And to me, that's what I'm calling the traditional organization, is like a crack in the sidewalk of humanity. Like, if that's not too wacky, like, it's not going to be here forever, because it's a small period of time compared to what humans are really good at. And the sooner we adapt to what humans are good at and build organizations that support that, the more successful we'll be at creative output. And it's possible for sure. We see it. It does happen. It's
Oh
not like
man,
it's magic.
I'm so tempted to jump into a dissection of *Sapiens* or the book *Work*. I don't know if you
Right.
read either of those, but like, there's so much we could go into. But
Yeah, I mean, another favorite book is the History of Everything, I think it's called. This is
haven't
very
read that one.
similar, more recent. Oh, it's radical. Read that.
Okay,
Like that's,
okay.
I think it's called A History of Everything, but I'll send you it. That's not it.
Okay, I'll put that on the
It's
list.
on that
But
same level of Sapiens, like rethink everything we think we know about culture, because it was all biased and wrong, because a bunch of white men were digging up bones and saying, hey, it looks like my dinner, so like it's very aggressive at using data and more recent discoveries to refute some of what we all thought we knew from history, at least the American, very biased view. It's getting ripped apart. So
yeah,
give it a little time.
interesting.
Great
Well,
book.
time flies when we're diving into such amazing topics in conversation, and so we've reached that point, John, where we're at the rapid fire questions set of a few questions that we ask every guest on the show, and so I'm going to jump right into these. First question: how do you define a modern people leader? What are the traits and characteristics?
They're designers. They're business partners. That's a word that's been around a long time, but they really are. They're helping run a business. Design means that they adapt and evolve and create better outcomes every day. They're empathetic, and they are front and center. They speak for the company in a lot of ways. So that's they're not in the back shuffling paper. They're out front delivering messages and spokespeople sometimes.
They're present. They're present for the organization, then they show up.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. Next question: if you could go back in time and talk to a 22-year-old John, what career advice would you give yourself and why?
Yeah, I mean, thankfully you let me think about that one ahead of time. I at 22, I wouldn't have listened to me. So the funny part about that is I would have said, listen more and chill out a little bit and slow down, and things will be fine. It took me a long time to figure out that I was, very arrogant and too driven in my own idea of what I thought should happen. So I would just say, listen.
Oh man, I can relate to that one big time. Second to last, because I'm going to throw a bonus question in here. My next question: if you could fix any HR people problem with a magic wand, what would it be and why?
I'm going to throw in two on this. One of them's really important and difficult, and it's about equity. I think if we could just right size everybody and get back to like a place where we're not dealing with historical losses and historical like mountains that people have to climb, it would make it a lot easier to do work today. Because there's this whole thing in my hometown called Bruce's Beach, where the city of Manhattan Beach 100 years ago took property away from a Black family, and they finally got it back. They gave them back the property, and it's actually a public park, and the family gets it, and they can do whatever they want with it. But that kind of stuff's really hard to fix in an HR function. So if we could have a wand that would fix that, it would help us a lot, like to have run better organizations. The other one's about time. And I wish I had a time bending wand or a time machine where you could say to a person, you need time, you've got it. And, because organizations and businesses are usually on some kind of urgency push it's part of the nature of doing it. And so time becomes this really difficult commodity, and it's difficult to manage. And it's one of my favorite mediums to play with, I think, is how can we use time to our advantage? But a magic wand would be really helpful with that one.
Love it. Love it. And so my bonus question, and this is only because I read the draft manuscript you shared with us, and I saw a quote. What is your favorite song from the band Rush?
Well, the quote is from what song is that?
Because I just
there's a
sprung this
lot of
one on you.
I think of Limelight. I mean, I think of I have a lot of Rush favorites. So I don't know if I have a singular favorite. But
Well,
this particular
mine
song
is
is
closer. Mine is closer to the heart.
closer
So
to the
I
heart.
will.
See, yeah, those are hard. Yeah, this quote that's in the book, just so everybody knows, is, and if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. And I can't help but have Geddy Lee in my head, and yeah, when. So yeah, I'm a bit of a Rush fan.
Yeah, same here. Same here. I couldn't help myself. So sorry, Daniel. Over to
No,
you.
you're good. You're
Only
good.
old people know about Rush. Sorry, Daniel.
I was trying to think of how I could contribute to the conversation, but I have nothing with Rush.
Can you name Rush's drummer? I mean,
No, I could
that's
not.
it. Neil Peart. We have to call
Oh,
out.
man.
Yeah, he was the great writer.
A legend. A legend.
So before we let you go, John, how can people keep up with you and all of the work you're doing? I know the book's a work in progress, but how can people stay up to date and what's going on?
Well, I've been trying to hang out in LinkedIn a lot. Like, I feel like it's the best platform right now. I don't spend any time on Twitter anymore. I kind of stopped posting on my blog. LinkedIn gives me all the tools I need. And it's such a rich environment with so many different voices and people that, and they let me like craft my feed. So I don't have to have like a bunch of stuff coming there that I didn't plan on. So I post things there. I always love engaging with people, reach out, connect with me. It's a great place for me to live beyond my zip code. So yeah, that's it.
Is there anyone in particular on LinkedIn that you've been following that you think we should bring onto the show?
Yes, I in fact just discovered somebody, I think like 2 days ago. Her name is Jessica Kriegel. She
Ooh.
works for Culture Partners, and she is the bomb on like what is culture and how is it tangible and how can you work with it. I would totally, if you could get her to come on, and she's super tight, like with her thinking and very clear. I've noticed another thing, we didn't talk about this much at all, but well-being is like this new thing. It's one of my metrics is sustainable, and that's where it all fits. And I think it's becoming very important that we understand how biology drives human performance. And I don't know if you could get her, but Jen Fisher, who's the chief wellness officer at Deloitte, she's posting lots of great stuff. There's people also at Thrive Global. So I would try like the whole thing. We had just talked to, I can't remember her name, but I can send it to you later. There's some doctors out there that understand like what we should be doing on a daily basis to have more energy. This is science. Like, I can't believe we're not doing it. And then if you want more traditional people leader people, I can throw some like Helen Russell at Rivian. Like, she's got some really interesting stuff going on. You've already had a bunch of
We're literally gonna reach out to every single one of these people. I think we reached out to Jen Fisher like
He's not
a
joking.
year
Jen.
and a half ago.
Yeah, she might be hard to get.
Yeah. Maybe since we've put out some episodes since then, she'll be more willing to join the show, but we'll definitely give it a shot.
Right.
All right. So we end every episode with one word or phrase close. Steven, I'm going to put you on the spot because you always do this to me. What do you got?
Wow. Man, I was not ready for this at all, but I'll bring it together. Hold on. So
I like the stall.
My one phrase close is, well, I'm gonna go with get over the workaround.
I like it. I'm gonna
Remind me not to hire you out for help on my book title. Like, oh my God. I get it though. I like it.
I'm gonna go with creativity. It sounded like one of the themes from today's conversation is that the organizations that have the ability to be creative are the ones that are going to win. And in order to enable people to be more creative, they need to be more human-centered. And I think this goes hand in hand with how everything's going to be automated and AI and machine learning over the next 10, 15 years and how jobs are really going to change. But like the one ingredient that we're still going to need from humans going forward is creativity. So creativity.
Awesome. I love that. I'm kind of in the same boat there. It's like, that's the whole point. So humans equal creativity, machines do not yet. I'm geeky about this stuff in a really weird way. I watch Westworld and Black Mirror.
Westworld.
And those, like, if you get all the way through Westworld and get past all the gratuitous, like violence and other junk. There's an arc to that series that is absolutely fascinating about the convergence of humans being automated and machines becoming sentient, and like what happens at the end. Right now, it's just fascinating. They keep playing right on that path of like, are humans better than machines? And I believe absolutely they are. And there's nothing better than the human entity, which is not a single person. It's a group of us, is going to always come up with a better solution than a machine.
Agreed. Yeah, for all of our listeners, if you gave up on Westworld in those in the previous 2 seasons, go back and watch it again, because this last season was amazing.
Yeah, and it gets really wide. I mean, it's really out there, but
yeah,
if you like this topic, that's what it's about.
Yeah. Well, John, thanks for joining us. This was a blast. You definitely lived up to the hype that Stephen and I were expecting.
Yeah, I told Daniel, I was like, man, I've been following this guy's posts on LinkedIn. He's just so thoughtful and always drops great comments on posts and has his own thoughts. And then I think what I'm most grateful for is having the opportunity for you to share your work in progress, start from scratch. And, Daniel and I thought we were just going to have like cool conversations on this. And now, people are letting us into their own thought leadership. And that's just a really, really amazing thing. And I think you're doing some great work, John. So thanks so much for joining us today.
Appreciate it. Well, it's a lot easier to do this work when you're talking and discussing and collaborating. So I appreciate it. It's actually fuel for my thinking, and it was a joy to be here. Thank you.
All right, guys. Have a good one. Take care.
Talk to you later.
Too.
Bye.
Bye.